have seen physical assault, and then it's just patterned later on. It's a syndrome. It becomes, just part of their repertoire of, well, my father beat my mother, and I guess that's the way he loved her, so that's what I'm going to do. And this is a vicious cycle. It's got to stop.
Absolutely. And, you mention different factors, poverty, other things. Well, poverty is a constant. There's always been poverty. The question is, what's new? What's new? And what's new is the upsurge in violence and graphic violence that spews out of our movie screens, TV screens, and video game screens that influence our children. And we have to be responsible. Yes, as I said before, parents are the first line of defense, and parents must ultimately be answerable for what their kids watch. But beyond that, shouldn't we as consumers hold accountable the people who make these things? Shouldn't we write to the movie makers, the video game makers, and say, we're not buying this anymore, so stop making it? Shouldn't we write or call the advertisers of these TV programs and say, I'm sorry, your products are no longer going to be on the shelves of our homes? And if enough of us do that, and if enough of us take action, you will see a tremendous reduction in violence. They make the violence because it sells. They make it because people watch it. And if we as a society can have the guts to say, we realize how this is killing our children. You have the statistics that 58,000 Americans were killed in Vietnam between 89 and 93. And 70,000 were killed by guns. There's a Canadian study that between 93 and 2001, incidents of physical violence in that society, assault, armed robbery, murder, rose 378%. I bet you, if you took the last 7 years, from 01 to 08, that 378% figure would seem minuscule. And it's time for us as consumers to say enough. Now, be clear. I'm not calling for censorship. I'm calling for responsibility. Huge difference. We are the ones who have to tell the movie makers, the video game makers, we don't want this stuff in our houses. We don't want this stuff on our screens. We want to see stories that require skill and texture and nuance to tell, not just blood and guts spilling out all over the place. And if we do that, I think we can make an impact.
One of the you were here, I think, a couple of years ago, and I bring this up as the conundrum. We were talking about the movie The Passion of the Christ, okay? There was nothing wrong with seeing a movie about a figure that had brought light to the world, a great prophet, whatever you believe about Christ or Jesus. Didn't matter. But that movie capitalized on violence. It capitalized on deceit, not telling the truth, and people bought into it. People bought into the violence of it, okay? And that disturbed me a great, great deal. Not that the horror didn't exist, but we don't need that to get the point of pain and what goes on in life. What happens is that we keep doing this. We have no idea, just as taxpayers, never mind people who are trying to bring the Word of God or morality into this issue. Just as a taxpayer, $178 billion are spent every year, all right, just to take care of the victims of violence. We know that they're talking now, trying to build more prisons, because I know they're overcrowded. I work in one of them, and it really hurts me to see women sleeping in the gym in a canoe. It's like a canvas canoe. But $90 billion for the courts a year, and $178 billion. What could we do to feed people and house them? with that kind of money. It's just absolutely very sad that we don't raise up in masses and just say enough.
It is.
Yeah.
And we're the ones that have to take the blame. I mean, we can't simply stand by and say it's not our problem anymore. Our children are dying. And it's not enough for those of us who may feel we're comfortable in suburban enclaves that this happens in the inner city. It's coming all over. And, you know, to me, Lorraine, when I study Bible or Torah, it's not a question of is this literally true. It's what does it teach me? And the story of Cain and Abel is so clear.
Yes.
We are responsible for our brothers. The video game makers, the movie makers can't say, oh, I don't know, am I my brother's keeper? Because we've got a moral voice, a moral imperative that says you are. Now, how are they going to get the message? Only if you and I and everybody out there rises up, contacts these people. Their screen credits are all over the movies and the video games. They're not hard to find.
Right.
And say to them, look, you're corrupting our society. You're wrecking the minds of our children. You're desensitizing them to violence. And then you're going to wonder, why is there a Columbine? Why have there been 47 school shootings in the last few years, most all of them in the United States? We're the ones that have to stand up and say, this is not really acceptable to us anymore. Again, I am not looking for censorship. I'm looking for responsibility, and I'm looking for the general public to hold those who make these forms of, quote, entertainment, unquote, hold them responsible.
Well, you know, this is the thing that, you know, I picked up in order to prepare myself for this show 2 different reports. One was from the Attorney General of the state of California, who had a task force, okay? And, you know, gave all these different statistics that I have here. And the other one was a journal, something from a postgraduate medicine journal of primary care physicians. So a lot of people are very interested in this topic of violence because they see where it intersects with health, intersects with, you know, taxes, like I said, and spent money. It just is amazing, though, that in one sense, you know, that expression, guns don't kill people, people kill people, that if arguments, alcohol, drugs, and guns contribute to violence and homicide, I agree that we can't say, all right, no more alcohol, you know, we tried that, didn't work, drugs or guns. And they say guns, the research that's been done is that very, very little percentage of guns are owned by the criminal element. But what do we do about the very little small percent that are creating such large problems?
Well,
you know, I don't know what to say either, but it's like we would not allow our children to drink alcohol until a certain age. So why would we let them take a gun or a BB gun or whatever? I know that we can do something.
Right. For me, Lorraine, the issue is, again, what's different? There have always been guns.
Yeah.
And, you know, people will have their different views on what the Second Amendment means and how that should be applied. And I accept those arguments, and I listen to them. My concern is what has changed and what is continuing to change and what is being done more and more that we can look at as the catalyst for this horrible increase in violence that we see. And to me, the answer to the question, what's new and different? The violence that spews forth from the movies, the TV, and those video games to which our children are increasingly addicted.
Yeah.
We're the ones that have to say,